Hello, welcome to American Christian or Christian American. Today we're going to talk about doing some comparisons on how black people, the safety of black people and the acceptance of black people in the United States and also in the country of Japan. I've got some interesting statistics and I've also got some different clips. We need to also understand some general ideas about the country of Japan. Now, first of all, I'm going to start out with a clip I've put together. There was a Japanese podcaster who interviews different people what it's like living in Japan. Sometimes he's interviewing black people in general, what it's like for black people to live in Japan. This particular clip was Americans who have moved to Japan and are never going back to America, and what they like about it. What I did was I picked out one particular African American and pieced together his pieces of interview because they would jump to different people. And I wanted to get his story because he had some interesting things to say. So we're going to look at that first, and then we'll move on to some other things. Once we talk more about Japan, we're going to come back to America and we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to bring some things together.
Moving here was actually fairly easy after I did the research and figured out how other people had gone through the process of getting here. I reached out to a friend who connected me with an American who was teaching at something called a Eikaiwa.
What is it?
And an Eikaiwa basically is a English conversation school that many Japanese people will go to. They're usually near like a train station.
It's everywhere, yeah.
It's everywhere. Yeah, it's very, very common here.
You have as American.
It is super safe here. Like I moved here from New York City and it's like super safe. Like I remember going to like a coffee shop and I saw someone leave their keitai, like their cell phone on the table and leave and no one touched it. And I, would see people with their computers like leave and go to the bathroom or go outside and talk on the phone or something and come back and nobody really bothers your stuff. And at night, it's super safe for women to walk home alone. I noticed that a lot. Like I'd walk home at like 2 or 3 in the morning and I'd see women alone.
Right.
Also, is in New York, you can't really drink that much and pass out. But people here, if you see someone passed out or sleep in public, nobody's touching their watch. Right. No one's touching their expensive bag. Like it's super safe.
When it comes to the lifestyle, how different is in Japan and the United States?
I think one of the biggest differences here is the size of my apartment. The living spaces are quite small here, especially if you live like in the inner city, like here in Shibuya. In New York City, my apartment was a little bit older, but I'm like 6'3", right? I'm quite tall for Japan. So some of the initial apartments I lived in, I had to like duck to get into the apartment, or I had to duck to get in from the living space into the bathroom. Fortunately, now I live in a pretty modern space, so I don't have to duck, but I think one of the biggest challenges here was my height. Right. As sort of like a 6'3" black man living in Japan, I never really have to worry about people being really afraid of me, or I feel kind of safe, especially with the police. Like if the police stop me here and ask to see my, resident card, I have no fear. I just take it out and show it to them. But if the police were to stop me in New York City or stop me in Virginia, I have a sense of anxiety and fear of the threat of violence. And that does not exist here. I think the biggest difference in mindset between sort of like an American mindset and a Japanese mindset, to be very general, is Americans are focused on individualism.
Right.
And I feel like Japanese society is focused on collectivism. Like Americans are socialized to think, what is best for me? What do I want to do for me? Where do I want to go? What do I like? Whereas I feel like in Japanese culture, there's a focus on, I don't know how to say it, it's like wa. like wa culture. So focus on like the group and what's best for the group and how the group can come together and form a synergy for the group to move forward.
Right.
Whereas in the US, I feel like it's like, how can I move forward, not my whole squad or group.
Talking or listening to this gentleman and his experiences of moving to Japan. And, you know, he talked about, of course, that his height was a problem because most Japanese people were shorter, especially in the older type of buildings. The newer buildings have kind of made more space in them, at least height-wise. But his experiences were quite interesting. That the general culture in Japan, if you left your things sitting there, they weren't bothered. If you passed out, not that we're talking about it's okay to pass out and sleep on the streets, but in many cities, especially in America, people would steal your things a lot of times. You might get somebody who looks out for you, but, you know, in Japan, generally, people aren't going to be bothered. It's not that it has a perfect culture. It has human beings. And so nothing is perfect. But there is a culture difference that is unique that affects the way they behave in their culture. All right. Now, the other thing he pointed out too is that when he's stopped by the police as a black man, he isn't worried about his life. He's not frightened or anything. He just knows the traffic stop, and you know, whether he deserves a ticket, whatever else, it's just going to go like that. Where in the United States, black people are afraid of being stopped by police because they never know when this is going to turn out to be a violent situation and whether or not they're going to be shot, wounded, or even killed, which is a regular problem for African Americans in this country because of how racist and atrocious this country is. Now, Japan has some racism, but we're not talking about the type of racism that would beat a person up or hurt somebody or kill somebody, or, you know, doesn't mean that there isn't anybody in Japan who might not feel that way. But we're talking about the general consensus. Even women can walk the streets at night and not worried about being assaulted or raped. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen at all. We're going to look at how large the city of Tokyo is, and the Tokyo metro area, just how big it is. So they're bound to have some things happen. But in the United States, you have to be very careful where you walk at all, especially if you're a woman by yourself. I mean, and if you're African American, you be careful where you walk, you be careful with the police, everything else. And so this man in Japan doesn't have to worry about that. So what is the notion about Japanese culture? What can we notice about it? And I'm going to play another clip and then we'll talk some more.
Why do Japanese people stay calm when the world falls apart? In 2011, a massive tsunami struck. Cities were destroyed. Thousands lost everything. But there was no looting, no shouting, no violence, just quiet lines and shared pain. Even in supermarkets, people bought only what they needed. No police needed to keep order. What held them together? A deep cultural belief. We endure together. This wasn't weakness. It was incredible strength. Japan's way of surviving might surprise you. Watch our full video to see how culture shaped this calm. Would your country react the same way?
So in 2011, we had a tsunami. The earthquake, first of all, did damage in Japan, but nothing like the tsunami. Wiped away, just wiped away buildings. People were never found. Some people were never found. It was a disaster. But there was no looting taking place. In America, when things happen, there's looting all over the place. People going to steal from businesses, what else, to get whatever they can for themselves. And in Japan, no. Interesting. Why? Whole different mindset. They're thinking about the whole. Also, like that black man that said in the interview, he said, they're a collective culture. Now, that collective culture also kept them close to foreigners for a long time. But as people go in there, they're going into a society that has a collective culture. Now, there could be some downfalls of a collective culture about individuals trying to seek out, what they want to do, but there's also a lot of positives about it. The culture thinks not just of themselves, they're not just selfishly centered. They think about the needs of everybody. So, like when they went to get groceries after the tsunami, they didn't hoard. They took a few things they needed, and everybody got a chance to get some things. I remember seeing a video during the disaster in Japan in 2011, and a reporter went up and tried to talk to these different Japanese people, and there was a man there. I believe it was a man. Could have been a woman, but I'll just go with a man for right now because I don't remember that exactly. But they were sitting there amongst all this rubble, and the reporter came by, and one of the people this man tried to give him some food to eat. And the reporter said, "No, you keep it for yourself." It was amazing that they were trying to be hospitable in just not thinking just about their situation. That's amazing. And really, the Bible is not, they try to claim it's an individualistic document. It's not. It's a collective document. Yes, you're supposed to work out your own salvation, meaning that you're responsible for the choices that you make. But it also talks again and again about working with each other, about helping each other, being there for each other. We are so far away from that kind of culture in America. We do some things together, but for the most part, it's all about me, what I want. All right? So let's talk about some more things here. I'm going to bring up some more clips here, and we're going to talk about more of this and compare it. Look at a few facts about Japan and what we're trying to do some comparisons here. First of all, the 20 safest cities around the world, and number 1 is Tokyo, Japan. Now, if you look at different categories or describe your search in different ways, you're going to find some different results. But Tokyo seems to come up there in most cases. One had it at 11 and otherwise. Now, this is looking at Tokyo proper. And Tokyo proper, as you can see here, is 13.9 million. But the murder rate is 0.7 per 100,000 people. Average annual household income, 6 million yen, or 51,955. Crime rate, 593 per 100,000 people. It's considered very safe, and people can walk on the streets. Now, if you look at the greater Tokyo metro population, we're talking about 37 million people, which is pretty incredible that the crime rate in Tokyo is so low considering how many people are there. All right, and then this one here is what it's like to be like being black in Japan. And then I'm just going to skim through it a little bit. I need to put this stuff in the thing for you to search more. This man is from France, which they were shocked about. Remember that Japan itself was a very isolationist country for many years. They didn't see any foreigners. It was just Japanese. It's only been the recent few years, I don't know how many, but they've opened up to foreigners, probably by 30 or 40 years. But even 40 years, there have been very, very few. So there's not many black people in Japan. They've become mostly from the U.S. and some places in Africa. But there's going to be a curiosity. So people are going to stare at African Americans or black people in general going to Japan. They're going to stare at white people some, but more black people, just because it's an oddity. But there doesn't seem to be really much violent crime. People can still walk the streets and be treated right. Tokyo will probably be most accepting. But outside of Tokyo, where people may see even less people, because the amount of black people you see in Japan, I mean, you may go a day without seeing anybody else, or who looks like you if you're a black person. I don't know, even as a white person, how many times you would see a white person in Japan with all those people there, or in Tokyo. But if you go into the outer, smaller communities, it would be even more of an oddity. So there's going to be curious stares, there's going to be stereotypes and stuff like that. But the violence isn't really there in its society, which we talk about in other areas here. It goes on, talks about few people in Japan. Again, they couldn't believe this guy was from France. They said, no, France is all white people. And what they don't realize is that many France was better than England and allowed citizenship to many of the countries that it colonized within Africa. So there are quite a few black people in France. I don't have the numbers on that, but so those stereotypes are something that gets them confused. So being black in Japan, it's fantastic. As part of apart from the prejudices, like anywhere else, there is nothing to report. Unfortunately, it's hardly a bed of roses. You can feel the effects of racism in Japan more if you decide to move in the land of the rising sun. In fact, you slowly become aware of what's going on, of the existence of racism. You need to know something. The Japanese don't really have a problem with black people, but with foreigners in general. Black, white, it doesn't matter. They quickly made the foreigners understanding that they're not Japanese, and they'll never be, even if they speak Japanese fluently. So those are things you have to consider. What we're talking about going there, it's different than other places and how they're treated. So it's a matter of people having a national identity. It's not that years and years and years ago, several different people were brought into an area like America, where it was brought in through racism and slavery and all these other things. It's different. Okay, we've talked a lot about America, and so I'll go over some of that stuff, but I'm going to play you one clip that goes back a little ways. And we're going to use that as a comparison, also the things that we have talked about over and over again about this country. And because otherwise I'm going to make this video really long. I mean, it can be great information, but I don't want you falling asleep in the video. You'll miss the information anyway. So I'm going to show you one more video here, and then we're just going to talk about things that we've been talking about and compare.
What do you call a man who beat the system, broke records, lived bold, and made white America lose its everlasting mind just by being brilliant, black, and unbothered? You call him Jack Johnson. And his story, baby, it's not just history. It's a whole masterclass in resistance. Born in 1878 to formerly enslaved parents, Jack Johnson didn't just grow up in America, he grew up against it. And by 1908, he had done the unthinkable. He became the first black world heavyweight champion. And listen, white America was enraged. Newspapers called it a disgrace. Fans called it the end of a civilization. So what did they do? They went looking for their savior, their great white hope. Enter James J. Jeffries, the undefeated former champion. He came out of retirement and said with his chest out, "I'm going into this fight to prove that a white man is better than a Negro." Well, guess what? Jack Johnson dominated him for 15 straight rounds. He danced, he smiled, he dodged punches like prophecy, and left his legacy on the mat. White America exploded. Race riots broke out across the country. From New York to Texas, white mobs attacked black communities out of the rage that a black man had the audacity to win, dared to be proud, and dared to smile while doing it. Over 25 cities reported violent outbreaks. Dozens were killed, hundreds were injured. Why? Because Jack Johnson winning a boxing match was seen as a threat to the entire foundation of white supremacy. This wasn't just about sports. This was about symbolism, about a black man standing tall in a ring that wasn't built for him and knocking out a lie that had held power for centuries. White supremacy took an L that day, and it was televised. But instead of giving Jack his flowers, they came for his freedom. Not in the ring, but in the courtroom. They used the Mann Act, a law meant to stop sex trafficking, to charge him for driving across state lines with his white girlfriend. That's right. He wasn't exploiting anybody. He was loving out loud, and for that, they tried to silence him. He fled the country, kept fighting, kept building, and kept living. He ran a restaurant, wrote books, gave lectures, performed in flea circuses, and even patented a wrench. Jack Johnson was a whole enterprise before the word brand even existed. Just think about this. This man was born only 13 years after slavery. He drove fast cars, he wore fur coats, and he ran with white women. They absolutely could not take it. He died in 1946, fast and free in a car crash. But his legacy, that's still undefeated. Now drop a black fist in the comments and share with someone who needs to hear.
All right, so white people just couldn't handle the fact that a black person actually achieved something better than any other white person. And so when they couldn't beat them, they decided to have riots and set an example to keep people down. And that's been the history of this country. Now you think back, the formation of Japan here, now I don't know all the history, but Japan goes way back. And, they've been Japanese there for a long time. I don't know the original time frames of that. But look at America in more recent history. America came to this soil with the determination to conquer it. And this is recent history. They brought with them the intention of making a white country. They made a constitution that they have lied about in many ways, and we keep indoctrinating our children, talking about what a great and free country this was, but it was nothing of the sort. It was a country established in racism. It was a country established in stealing the land from the Native Americans and murdering them. It was a country that went to war with Mexico to acquire land. I mean, it was a country where they invaded and conquered and then declared that they were developing a free nation. But in other words, they took freedom away from other people. And slavery, the brutality they had in slavery, the way they treated black people in this country has been appalling. Is it over? No, it's not over. It keeps going on and on and on. We had slavery. Well, we have a war to free the slaves. And people say, well, the North was trying to free the slaves. They were all, you know what? The North, some people, yes, were abolitionists against slavery. However, if you look at the evidences after slavery, they didn't want them near them either. They treated them badly. They wouldn't give them jobs. So were all these people really in favor of black people? No, they weren't. So why was the big push for the Civil War? Yes, there were a few people who were against slavery, but there were also a lot of people jealous of the unfair advantage the South had with all the free labor. So it came down to more of that, I believe, than it did for any concern for the South. And there are more people today who, care, but we went from slavery to sharecropping to Jim Crow laws. Black people before Jim Crow laws were actually starting to achieve things in the government, but then Jim Crow came and wiped a lot of that out. The fight for able to vote, the fight to be able to own land, the fight to be able to live in a neighborhood that you want to be. So then we have, with the Jim Crow laws coming up and the civil rights movement, and then the civil rights solved, and then we have the war on drugs. The war on drugs is not, all it is a way to incarcerate black people in this country and to keep them down, to imprison them, and to put them into slavery again, because that's exactly what American prisons are. American prisons are a form of slavery. And they do everything they can to keep them coming back so they don't get out. And once you're in prison, they take away your rights to vote. So now you don't even have the right to represent your neighborhoods or your people. And so it keeps the power with white people. So do you recognize the difference between Japan and the United States yet? Now, Japan is not perfect. No country is. But they think about what's best for the whole of Japan. And as if they accepted people in there, you might not ever be accepted as Japanese, but they're not going to treat you, degrade you, dehumanize you like this country does. So no wonder several African Americans who felt more comfortable there. There's still more cultural rules there and things that go. So there's good and bad about the collective culture thing, but what's good about it is that they're not stealing from each other so much. They're working together more. I didn't say all the time. Looting doesn't exist because the people have been treated. Here in this country, looting goes on. Why? Because we're not connected, we're not together, we're constantly against each other, white people constantly oppressing black people and other people. Look at the administration we've got in this country now with Donald Trump. He is continuously oppressing people, trying to keep the poor down and black people down, trying to keep health care away from people so people get sick and die, or people go bankrupt in their homes. And when they can't afford nursing homes, they take the home away from them to pay for it. So this country is constantly in turmoil. It's thinking about me, 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 me. It's thinking about how much power can I gain. Are there rich and powerful people in Japan? Of course there are. But it's not that a country is 100% this way, 100% that way, but there is still a wide chasm, a huge difference between the two different cultural aspects. And even though those things are overcome in Japan, there is much less likely of the threat of violence for people, African Americans or black people who go to live in Japan, than coming to this country. This country can't stand if white people aren't first, because they want to propagate that white people not only are the best, they were first, and then everybody else is beneath them. When that is completely wrong. White people were not first. Human being in all these different races, there's only one race. We are all 99.9% identical. It's only that 1/10 of a percent that decides hair color, height, body shapes, penis size, breast size, all these different things are all in that 1/10 of a percent, or skin color, everything. We are 99.9% identical. And it's impossible for white people to be first. Even if we didn't have that evidence, white people only make up 15 to 18% of the world's population. You think the rest of the world came from a small group of 15 to 18%? No, it comes from the other way. And if we weren't thinking as a white population that we have to be first, we have to be superior, and if we just sit down and be human beings, we wouldn't have to worry about all that. We could just teach each other about the importance of caring about human beings. Until the next time on American Christian or Christian American.